My name is Elena Vance, and until a few months ago, I believed that family was an unshakable fortress. I was the eldest daughter, the one who carried the weight, smoothed over the arguments, and protected everyone around me. At 30 years old, I felt like I had finally built the life I was always meant to live. I was married to Liam, a brilliant, fiercely protective architect who loved me with a quiet intensity that grounded my entire world. For 6 years, our marriage wasn't just a partnership. It was our sanctuary. And after years of trying, of quiet heartbreaks and negative tests, we finally got our miracle. I was pregnant with a baby girl. We decided to name her Maya. By the time I reached my 8th month, our nursery and our Greenwich, Connecticut home was fully painted a soft, dusty rose. Liam had hand-carved the crib himself. Every single night, he would place his hands on my swollen, round belly and whisper his dreams to our unborn daughter, promising her a life filled with safety, laughter, and unconditional love. We were so close to the finish line. We were 30 days away from holding our entire future in our arms. But life can shatter in a single breathless second. 3 weeks before I hit my 8th month, Liam went out to grab a late-night craving for me. He never came back. A reckless driver ran a red light, struck his car broadside at 70 miles an hour, and fled the scene. Just like that, the man who was my anchor was gone. The grief didn't just break my heart. It physically paralyzed me. Suddenly, I wasn't just a woman mourning her soulmate. I was an 8-month pregnant widow, terrified of bringing a fatherless child into a world that felt entirely hostile. The silence in our home was deafening. Every corner of the house reminded me of the life we were supposed to have. Seeing me drown in my own sorrow, my parents insisted that I shouldn't be alone. They begged me to pack a few bags and move back into my childhood home in Greenwich. They told me they wanted to wrap me in comfort to take care of me and to help me prepare for Maya's birth. And then there was my younger sister, Chloe. She called me crying, her voice cracking with apparent empathy, begging me to come home so she could be the supportive sister I desperately needed. I was so consumed by my own tears, so physically heavy with my pregnancy, and so deeply vulnerable that I took their offers at face value. I packed up my bags, left my beautiful, quiet sanctuary, and walked right into the lion's den. I thought I was returning to a safe haven built on blood and loyalty. I had absolutely no idea that the sister I had spent my entire life protecting was waiting in the shadows, viewing my tragedy as nothing more than an inconvenient distraction from her own selfish desires. Growing up, the dynamic between me and Chloe was always crystal clear. I was the giver, and she was the taker. Our parents completely enabled it, treating Chloe like a fragile glass doll who couldn't handle the harsh realities of the world. While I was expected to be the steel pillar holding everything together, I didn't mind it back then. I loved my sister, and I genuinely believed that protecting her was my duty as the oldest. But as we grew into adulthood, Chloe's entitlement didn't just grow. It mutated into a dangerous, insatiable obsession with status, luxury, and keeping up appearances at any cost. 4 years ago, my parents' boutique interior design business hit a catastrophic wall. They were hit with a massive lawsuit from a wealthy client combined with years of terrible financial management. They were on the absolute brink of filing for bankruptcy. The most heartbreaking part for them wasn't losing the business. It was the realization that they could no longer afford Chloe's exorbitant tuition at an elite ultra-luxury fashion and design institute in New York. Chloe threw tantrums that shook the walls of our house, crying that her life was ruined, that her friends would look down on her, and that her future was entirely destroyed. I couldn't bear to see my parents age 10 years in a single week. And despite Liam's subtle warnings about enabling her behavior, I couldn't see my sister's dreams shattered. I went into my personal savings account, money I had painstakingly accumulated through years of working overtime as a senior corporate consultant, and withdrew $85,000. I handed it directly to my parents to pay off their immediate debts and secure Chloe's remaining 2 years of tuition. I didn't ask for a single penny back. I didn't demand a contract. I did it out of pure, unadulterated love. But Chloe's appetite only grew. 2 years later, she managed to charm her way into the social circle of Julian Sterling, the sole heir to a massive multi-billion-dollar international shipping empire. Julian was old money, sophisticated, and surrounded by Greenwich high society. Chloe knew this was her golden ticket to a life of permanent luxury. She immediately began transforming herself into a high society chameleon, but her reckless spending habits quickly caught up with her. She maxed out 3 secret credit cards, trying to maintain a wardrobe of designer clothes, fine jewelry, and high-end dinners just to look like she belonged in Julian's world. 6 months before Julian proposed, Chloe came to my apartment in the middle of the night, hyperventilating. She confessed she was $22,000 in credit card debt. She wept, clutching my hands, telling me that if Julian's family ran a background check on her before the engagement, which old money families always do, they would see her financial instability and force Julian to dump her. Once again, I allowed my maternal instincts to override my common sense. I quietly transferred $22,000 to clear her debt. I spent the next 6 months helping her curate her social media, proofreading her etiquette lessons, and acting as her unpaid personal advisor just to ensure she looked flawless for the Sterling family. I sacrificed my own financial security, my time, and my emotional energy to build the pedestal she stood on. I truly believed that by saving her from her own disasters, I had earned a lifelong bond of loyalty, respect, and deep familial love. I thought that if the world ever collapsed on me, Chloe would be the first person to catch me. I had no idea that to a true narcissist, your past sacrifices aren't a reason for gratitude. They're just proof that you can be milked for more. The air in Greenwich on that specific Tuesday afternoon was heavy, thick with the humid threat of a summer thunderstorm. It was exactly 1 month before Chloe and Julian's heavily publicized $1.5 million wedding at the Belle Haven Club, an event the local society papers were calling the wedding of the year. The house was completely chaotic, overflowing with custom linen samples, silver-embossed invitations, and tiers of wedding cake flavors. My parents were completely consumed by the logistics, eager to cement their ties to the Sterling billionaire empire. I had spent the morning at Greenwich Hospital for a high-risk OB/GYN checkup. Ever since Liam's death, my blood pressure had been dangerously erratic, spiked by grief, and the constant suffocating weight of my sudden loneliness. The doctor gave me strict orders to rest, monitor my symptoms, and keep my stress levels at absolute zero. I drove back to my parents' house early, looking forward to nothing more than lying down in the quiet guest wing, holding the hand-carved wooden ultrasound frame Liam had made, and trying to find the strength to get through another day. When I pulled up the driveway, the house looked deceptively peaceful. My parents' car wasn't there. They had gone to an afternoon meeting with the wedding florist in Manhattan. But as I walked up the porch, I noticed the heavy mahogany front door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open quietly, stepping into the cool, air-conditioned foyer. "Mom! Dad!" I called out, my voice echoing off the high ceilings. No one answered. I walked down the long hallway toward the guest wing, my sneakers making no sound on the plush Persian rugs. As I drew closer to the end of the hall, a sound caught my attention. It was coming from the guest suite. Hushed, breathless giggles followed by a familiar, deep male voice. I paused, my hand instinctively dropping to support the heavy weight of my 8-month pregnant belly. It definitely wasn't Julian's voice. Julian possessed a very distinct, formal, mid-Atlantic accent. This voice was raspy, casual, and painfully familiar. My heart began a slow, heavy thud against my ribs. I walked closer, my breathing shallow, and pushed the door open just a fraction of an inch. The sight inside shattered whatever remaining faith I had in humanity. There, in the center of the room, was my sister, Chloe, completely wrapped in the arms of Marcus. Marcus wasn't just any man. He was my late husband, Liam's best friend, his college roommate, and the current business partner who was supposed to be helping me liquidate Liam's architectural firm to secure my baby's future. They were kissing passionately, surrounded by the very wedding catalog as Julian was paying for. I gasped, the sound escaping my throat before I could stop it. The bedroom door creaked open fully. Chloe and Marcus whipped around, scrambling apart in an instant. Chloe's face flushed a deep, panicked crimson, her eyes widening as she took in my large, pregnant frame standing in the doorway. But within a fraction of a second, that panic didn't turn into shame or an apology. It morphed into pure demonic rage. "Elena," Marcus stammered, pulling up his shirt, his face pale with guilt. "Shut up, Marcus," Chloe snapped, her voice dropping to a vicious, venomous hiss. She stepped toward me, her eyes locking onto my hands. I had instinctively pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling as I unlocked the screen and snapped a crystal-clear photo of them together. Chloe knew exactly what that photo meant. If Julian Sterling saw it, the wedding would be canceled before sunset. The ironclad Sterling prenuptial agreement would ensure she got nothing. The multi-million-dollar mansion, the black AMX cards, the private jets, and her carefully constructed future of endless wealth and high society royalty would vanish like smoke. She was a cornered animal, and she looked at me not as her grieving sister who had sacrificed everything for her, but as an existential threat that needed to be neutralized. "Give me the phone, Elena!" Chloe screamed, lunging across the room toward me like a feral animal. Her face was twisted into an unrecognizable mask of pure malice. I instinctively took a step back into the hallway, wrapping both of my arms tightly around my heavy 8-month pregnant stomach to shield my baby. "Stay away from me, Elena!" I yelled, my voice trembling with a mixture of horror and physical exhaustion. "How could you do this?" To Julian, to Liam's memory, Marcus was his best friend. Marcus stood frozen by the bed, completely paralyzed by his own cowardice, watching the scene unfold without moving a muscle. But Chloe didn't care about morals, memories, or my grief. She only cared about her golden ticket to the Sterling Empire. When she saw me backing away towards the stairs, realizing I was trying to protect the evidence of her infidelity, she completely lost her mind. Before I could even register her movement, she closed the distance between us. She didn't try to grab my hands. Instead, she raised her heavy, thick-heeled leather boot and launched it directly into the center of my swollen 8-month pregnant belly. The impact was catastrophic. It felt like a white-hot explosion rippling through my entire body. The sheer force of the kick knocked the air out of my lungs and I collapsed heavily on the hardwood floor, my knees buckling beneath me. A sharp, blinding agony flared through my abdomen, worse than anything I had ever imagined possible. I let out a choked, desperate scream, tears instantly blinding my vision. As I lay curled on my side in a fetal position, gasping for breath, I felt a sudden, terrifying rush of warm fluid soak completely through my clothes and onto the floor. My water had broken. The trauma of the blow had thrown my body into instant, violent, premature labor. "Oh my God, Chloe," Marcus whispered, his voice cracking as he took a step forward, finally realizing the gravity of what had just happened. "Her water broke. She's bleeding. We need to call an ambulance right now." "Don't you dare touch that phone, Marcus," Chloe hissed, stepping over my agonizing, trembling body. She didn't look down at me with a single shred of remorse or sisterly love. She looked at me like I was trash she had just swept out of her way. She bent down, brutally prying my fingers open to snatch my phone from my weak, sweaty hands. Because I was semi-conscious and shaking violently from the physical trauma, she forcefully grabbed my face, pressing my thumb against the biometric sensor to unlock the screen. With a few rapid taps of her manicured fingers, she completely deleted the photo I had taken, wiped the recently deleted folder, and threw the phone onto the floor far out of my reach. "Listen to me carefully, Elena," Chloe whispered, leaning down so close I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with the metallic scent of my own blood. "You tripped over the hallway rug because you're clumsy and blinded by grief. If you say a single word about Marcus to Julian or our parents, I will make sure the firm's liquidation paperwork disappears, And you won't have a single dime to feed that bastard baby of yours. Die with your brat for all I care." She straightened up, grabbed Marcus by the arm, and practically dragged him out of the room. I heard the front door slam shut, followed by the roar of her sports car speeding down the driveway. They left me there. They left a grieving widow and an unborn premature child to bleed out alone on the floor, all to protect a liar's wedding. The world returned to me in fragments of blinding white light, the rhythmic metallic beep of a heart monitor, and a sharp burning sensation in my arm. I tried to move, but my entire body felt as though it had been shattered into pieces. My hand instinctively flew down to my stomach, my heart seizing with terror. It was flat. A cold panic seized my throat, and I tried to scream, but only a dry, raspy wheeze escaped my lips. Just then, a nurse rushed to my side, gently placing a hand on my shoulder. "Easy, Elena. You're at Greenwich Hospital. You're safe." "My baby," I choked out, tears burning my eyes. "Where is my baby?" "She's alive," the nurse whispered, giving me a reassuring smile that finally let me breathe. "She's in the NICU in an incubator. She's a fighter, Elena, a beautiful little girl. But you had an emergency C-section due to severe placental abruption from a fall. You lost a lot of blood." Before I could process the miracle of my daughter's survival, the door to my private ICU room swung open. My parents rushed in, their faces pale with anxiety, followed closely by Chloe. She was wearing an immaculate pastel pink sundress, her eyes artfully red, clutching a handkerchief to her face. She looked like the picture of a devastated, loving younger sister. "Oh, thank God you're awake," Chloe cried out, rushing to the opposite side of my bed and grabbing my cold hand. Her grip was tight, almost warningly tight. "The doctors told us you tripped over the hallway rug in the guest wing. We found you unconscious, Elena. I've been crying for 48 hours straight, praying for you and the baby." I looked into her eyes. There wasn't a single ounce of real worry in them. Instead, I saw a calculating, predatory flicker. She was scanning my face, waiting to see if I was going to expose her right there in front of her parents and the medical staff. She was sizing up her enemy, ready to unleash her high-priced lawyers to claim I was a mentally unstable, grieving widow, making up wild stories to ruin her wedding. In that exact second, something shifted deep inside my soul. The naive, giving older sister died on that hardwood floor. The heartbreaking sadness over Liam's death and the agonizing trauma of Chloe's boot hitting my stomach hardened into a cold, diamond-sharp, calculated determination. I realized that screaming, crying, or accusing her now would change nothing. Her fiancé's billionaire family would shield her, and my parents would try to sweep it under the rug to save the Sterling alliance. If I wanted real justice, I had to play her game. I had to become the ultimate actress. I blinked slowly, letting my eyes glaze over with a look of vacant confusion. I pulled my hand weakly from hers, rubbing my forehead. "The rug," I whispered, my voice sounding fragile and hollow. I remember walking down the hall. I felt so dizzy. My blood pressure, everything went black. I don't remember anything else. I watched the visible, massive wave of relief wash over Chloe's entire face. The tension left her shoulders, and a triumphant, arrogant smirk almost crept onto her lips. She turned to our parents, wiping a fake tear. "See, I told you. Her grief just made her faint." "Oh, Elena, I'm just so glad you're safe. Now I can finally focus on my wedding next month without worrying." I forced a weak, submissive smile and nodded, sinking back into my pillows. "Enjoy your countdown, Chloe," I thought as I listened to her plan her $1.5 million day. "You think you deleted the evidence? You think you broke me, but you just gave me the perfect weapon." Chloe completely forgot who she had married into. She forgot that my late husband Liam wasn't just a brilliant architect. He was a paranoid tech genius who spent his free time building custom end-to-end encrypted cloud servers for our personal security. He absolutely despised mainstream corporate tech companies and had wired both our home and my parents' house with a completely independent closed-circuit security network that bypassed normal deletion protocols. The moment my parents and Chloe left my hospital room that evening, I waited for the hallway to quiet down. I called Liam's mother, Martha. She was the only person in the world who truly understood my grief. I asked her to bring me the encrypted tablet Liam kept in his office safe, telling her it held precious video logs of him speaking to my belly before he died. When she delivered it, she kissed my forehead, looked at my sleeping premature baby through the NICU glass, and left me alone to do my work. With trembling fingers, I booted up the black tablet. I opened the proprietary software Liam had coded himself. I bypassed the dual-factor authentication and plugged in the timestamp from that fatal Tuesday afternoon. My breath caught in my throat. The data was all there. Because Chloe had unlocked my phone using my thumb while I was semi-conscious on the floor, she thought deleting the photo from my camera roll and wiping the recently deleted folder was enough to erase her sins. But Liam's server automatically cloned every single media file captured on my device to our private cloud the exact second the shutter clicked. There it was, a crystal-clear high-definition photograph of Chloe draped over Marcus on the guest bed. But that wasn't even the Holy Grail. Liam had also installed a microscopic high-definition nanny cam inside the hallway bookcase months ago to keep an eye on the house while my parents traveled. I clicked play on the video file. The footage was staggering. It didn't just show the argument. It captured the entire brutal sequence in horrific, undeniable detail. I watched myself backing away, desperately wrapping my arms around my 8-month pregnant belly to shield my daughter. I watched Chloe advance like a monster, raising her heavy leather boot and launching it with sickening force directly into my stomach. The audio was flawless. My blood curdled hearing my own agonizing scream, followed by the distinct splash of my water breaking on the hardwood floor. Then came the absolute nail in her coffin. The audio clearly picked up Chloe stepping over my shaking body, forcing my thumb onto the phone, and hissing her confession to Marcus. If that baby dies, it's Elena's fault for being a nosy. Just make sure Julia never finds out about us. I sat in the dark hospital room, the blue light of the screen illuminating the cold tears streaming down my face. A normal sister would have called the police immediately, but I knew how the system worked in Greenwich. My parents would hire a high-priced defense attorney using the money I gave them, claimed the video was altered, and Julian's family would use their immense public relations machine to hush up the scandal to avoid embarrassing the sterling name before the wedding. Chloe would get a slap on the wrist, a wealthy settlement, and a quiet life. No, a simple police report was too merciful for what she did to my daughter. I wanted total, absolute, unmitigated annihilation. I downloaded the raw, unedited 4K video files, backed them up across 3 separate external hard drives, and began weaving the digital noose that Chloe would willingly stick her head into. For the next 3 weeks, I delivered a performance that deserved an Academy Award. I discharged myself from the hospital early, moving back into the guest wing of my parents' house with my tiny, fragile daughter, Maya, who required clockwork monitoring. I wrapped myself in the guise of a broken, submissive, amnesiac widow. I wore baggy clothes, kept my eyes downcast, and spoke in a soft, defeated whisper. Chloe was completely intoxicated by her own perceived victory. Seeing me so seemingly defeated made her entirely drop her guard. She strutted around the estate like a queen, micromanaging the final details of her 1.5 million-old wedding. She even had the audacity to ask me to sit in the front row, telling our parents it would look beautifully unified for the society reporters to see the grieving sister supporting the bride. "Of course, Chloe," I whispered meekly, cradling Maya against my chest. "Whatever you need to make your day perfect." 10 days before the wedding, I found my golden opportunity. Chloe was having a massive meltdown in the living room, screaming at the event coordinators over the phone. The high-tech media production team she'd hired from Manhattan to handle the visuals at the Bellhaven Club had suddenly doubled their fee for the custom digital slideshow and commemorative video package. I don't care about their premium fees. I just need it done, Chloe shrieked, slamming her designer purse onto the counter. Julian's family expects a flawless presentation of our relationship timeline. I stepped out of the shadows, offering a soft, comforting smile. Chloe, let me handle it. You know, Liam taught me how to use all the advanced digital editing software. I can manage the venue's media presentation for you. I'll curate all your childhood photos, your engagement portraits with Julian, and compile them into a seamless high-definition slideshow. It will save you thousands, and it will give me something to occupy my mind so I don't just sit here crying over Liam. Chloe stopped pacing, her sharp eyes narrowing as she looked at me. She was calculating the financial savings against my submissive demeanor. She truly believed my brain was still foggy from the trauma, completely convinced I posed zero threat. Are you sure you can handle it, Elena? She asked, her voice dripping with condescension. The Bellhaven Club uses a massive password-protected LED wall system. It's a very sophisticated AV setup. I can't have you screwing up the timing. I promise I won't screw it up, I replied, keeping my voice entirely leveled, suppressing the venom, rising in my throat. Just give me the login credentials for the venue's media portal and sole access to the AV control booth. I'll make sure it's a presentation the Sterling family will never forget. 2 hours later, the event coordinator emailed me the exclusive password-protected administrator rights to the Bellhaven Club's Grand Ballroom media server. I locked myself in my room, pulled out Liam's black tablet, and began formatting the file. I created a beautiful, deceptive introduction. 10 minutes of gorgeous romantic photos of Chloe and Julian smiling on yachts, drinking champagne, and pretending to be in love. But embedded directly in the middle of that file, hidden behind an encrypted trigger code that only I controlled, was the raw, unedited 4K security footage from the hallway. I didn't just include the video of her kicking me. I enhanced the audio, adding bold, high-contrast subtitles so that every single word of her vicious confession would be blindingly clear to every person in the room, even from the very back row. Chloe thought she was walking into her fairy tale ending. She had no idea she had just handed me the keys to her execution chamber. The afternoon of July 9th, 2026 arrived with a suffocating heat. The Bellhaven Club was an absolute fortress of wealth. Its grand ballroom boasting crystal chandeliers, massive white floral arrangements, and 500 of the most elite high society guests in the tri-state area. Billionaires, media reporters, and political figures mingled, sipping expensive champagne while waiting for the wedding of the year to begin. Chloe looked utterly radiant in her custom $45,000 designer lace gown, standing at the altar beside a beaming, oblivious Julian Sterling. My parents sat in the front row, bursting with arrogant pride. I sat right next to them, dressed in a muted, somber black dress, holding my tiny 3-week-old daughter, Maya, tightly against my chest. I looked at Chloe and she flashed me a brief, smug, victorious smirk from the altar. She thought she had won it all. The ceremony proceeded flawlessly until the officiant reached the traditional climax. If anyone here knows any reason why these two should not be legally joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. The ballroom fell into a respectful, heavy silence. Nobody moved. I gently handed Maya to a trusted nurse I had hired for the day, stood up calmly from the front row, and walked directly toward the high-tech AV control booth at the back of the room. The technicians looked up in confusion, but I flashed my password-protected administrative credentials on my phone. They stepped aside. I locked the booth door from the inside. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I didn't say a word. I simply entered the override code and hit enter. The grand romantic string quartet music abruptly cut out, replaced by a harsh static pop. The lights in the ballroom slammed shut, plunging the elite crowd into darkness. A second later, the massive 20-foot LED wall behind the altar roared to life in ultra-high definition. It started with the beautiful engagement photos I had promised, but within 3 seconds, the screen violently glitched, flashing a deep crimson. Suddenly, the pristine white walls of my parents' guest hallway filled the entire room. 500 people gasped in unison as the 4K security footage began to play. The audio echoed through the state-of-the-art surround sound speakers, crisp and terrifying. The entire high society crowd watched in horror as I backed away on screen, desperately shielding my pregnant stomach. They watched Chloe advance like a demon, raising her heavy leather boot and launching it with sickening, brutal force directly into my 8-month pregnant belly. "Oh my God!" a woman in the second row shrieked. The video didn't stop. It played the explicit, undeniable footage of Chloe wrapped in Marcus's arms, followed by the agonizing sound of my water breaking and me sobbing on the floor. Then the bold, high-contrast white subtitles flashed across the screen as Chloe's voice boomed through the ballroom, stepping over my trembling body. "If that baby dies, it's Elena's fault for being a nosy. Just make sure Julian never finds out about us." The fallout was instantaneous, chaotic, and catastrophic. Julian Sterling went completely pale, his jaw dropping as he turned to look at the monster standing beside him in a white dress. His father, a notorious old money billionaire, stood up, his face deep purple with rage. He slammed his glass onto the table, shattering it, and roared at the top of his lungs. "Security! Get this psychotic white trash out of my sight!" Julian stripped the heavy diamond engagement ring off Chloe's finger, threw it directly at her face, and spat at her feet. "You are a disgusting, pathetic monster," he choked out, turning his back on her as he walked off the altar. He immediately announced to the press and the crowd that he was suing my parents' entire family for corporate fraud, defamation, and full reimbursement of the $1.5 million wedding costs. Chloe collapsed on her knees in the middle of the altar, her custom dress tearing as she wailed, screaming and sobbing, covering her face as hundreds of elite guests pulled out their phones, recording her ultimate public humiliation. My parents were hyperventilating, realized their entire reputation was permanently turned to ash, and that the impending lawsuits would bankrupt them completely. Just then, the heavy double doors of the ballroom burst open. 4 Greenwich police officers walked in, handcuffs drawn. Because I had secretly forwarded the raw footage and the hospital's medical abruption reports to the district attorney the night before, a warrant had already been issued. They marched right past the elite crowd, grabbed Chloe by her manicured arms, and hauled her screaming out of the venue in front of the flashing cameras of the media. She is currently facing felony aggravated assault, identity theft, and fetal endangerment with a guaranteed prison sentence. I walked out of the Bellhaven Club into the fresh post-storm afternoon air, holding Maya close to my heart. I didn't look back at the chaos, the screams, or the ruin of the family that betrayed me. I felt a profound, beautiful peace wash over me. I had served the justice Liam would have wanted. I sold my remaining shares of the estate, severed all ties, and moved to a quiet coastal town. Looking down at my beautiful, breathing daughter, I knew our future was clean, safe, and built on absolute truth.